Hello and welcome to the first episode in our Talking Print series of exclusive podcasts brought to you by Renovotec, a leading name in end-to-end AIDC and enterprise mobility technology solutions. On today's episode, we'll be discussing why a cohesive approach to print can ultimately result in considerable cost savings within your manufacturing operation. My name's Dave Harries, and joining me to discuss this important topic is Marien, Country Manager for Benelux, and Jamie Mottershead. He's the Technical Director here at Renovotec. Jan and Jamie, thank you very much for being here today at Renovotec's Innovation Centre. Jan, could I start with you? To what extent would you say manufacturing organisations are dependent upon printing solutions?
I think realistically, looking at it, it's everything starts with a barcode. We do solutions that, scan things, use data from it. So without the barcode, you can't do anything. So without printing a barcode to put on a product or a pallet or a shrink wrap or whatever, you won't be able to do what we do best.
And presumably, this might sound like a rookie question, but the quality of the printing has to be sufficient. So the barcode can be read accurately every single time.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're printing a barcode that's going to work yet.
Yeah, just to add to that, probably, talk about the first time, getting things right the first time, every time is really important from the printing solutions. And as Jan mentioned, moving into multiple different areas within a manufacturing space, then following that into a logistics space is really important. So getting that first time right is critical.
Yeah. And talking of critical, Jan, could you give me some examples perhaps of where these are mission critical processes?
Well, imagine that you're manufacturing goods, that you're mixing different components together. If something goes wrong with the product identification label that you're putting on there, the whole system has to stop. And it could be products that only last for an hour before having to be packed. You lose the whole production that you've done. So from there on, you have to go back to square one again. So there's a lot of product that will get lost.
Presumably printers, by their nature, even with all the modern technology we've got, are in the end mechanical devices, and and mechanical devices can go wrong.
Correct. The technology realistically already comes from back to the 90s. Everything has gotten a bit faster and nicer and so on, but it's still a mechanical thing that prints labels. A lot of things can go wrong with it.
And just to add to that, there's multiple endpoints now that lead to where the printer is. Gone are the days of a single stream and one barcode onto a product in terms of identification. We have multiple different ways of connecting to printers, not only to manage and service them, which we'll come on to in a second, but also to feed data, multiple different software capabilities to make sure the right label, the right barcode gets onto the product or products, making sure that from a pharmaceutical perspective that we have batch information, a batch label maybe needed to be produced, whether that's a best before date or even serialization in terms of data. So, the printer plays a really key part of that.
Jan, would you say that it's typically one person within a manufacturing operation who tends to be responsible for printers, and printer consumables, maintenance? Repairs?
No, I'm definitely sure it isn't, and I think that's where our headache or our challenges come in, because historically you'll have three people. You'll have the person that does the capex expenditure to buy the hardware, to buy the printer. You'll have somebody buying the labels and the ribbons for the machine, and then you'll have an IT department that's responsible for the maintenance of it. And those people all have their own check boxes to do. They never talk together. So at the end of the day, there's a cost-saving possibility, but we can never get the right people in the room.
So is that a challenge for you then? As
it's
when
a big
you're
challenge.
Trying to help companies, have the best possible systems.
Look, I will go as far as to say, if you look at any company today, the biggest cost saving they can do, where they can get it today, is on the printing side. But we don't get allowed to speak to the right people in the same room to be able to convince them to get this done.
You think a different approach could have a real impact on overall print costs?
I know it does, yes.
Yeah. And Jamie, is that kind of your perception as well?
Yeah, I think once you start bringing all the three elements that Jan mentioned together, and you look at it in a perception of a solution rather than a requirement, which is what a lot of people look at the moment. There is a necessity to have a printer. There is a necessity to have ribbons and labels. And once you look at it as a managed service approach, so one of the offerings that we have is we're looking at the amount of labels that have been printed on average and reordering based on the use case. We're looking at when the print heads or the ribbons are about to fail or reach their end of life, and we're sending engineers out then to replace those at the key points. So these are, again, mission critical pieces of equipment within an operation that simply can't fail. So if we're able to make sure and manage that process through our managed service offering, then we're able to make sure that these printers just simply keep on printing.
And Jan, you've said already that you're certain that there are cost savings to be had, if the right approach is taken. So could you provide me with an example, perhaps, of where a cohesive approach has reaped such major benefits for an organisation?
Yeah, if you look at it, a printer goes down, the manufacturing plant goes down. So if we look at it at the end of the day, if we can talk to all three parties I mentioned before in the room, we could have a printed warranty program, like Jamie has said, whereby by replacing the print head, the printer will break down less. It could mean that we have to use slightly better labels going through. It could mean that we need to make some changes to the label. But with that approach, there's definitely massive savings to be made, and not just the savings, but to make sure that everything keeps on running.
And I think probably just, adding to that, adding these types of printers to an MDM solution, a mobile device management solution, that means that you can connect to these type of equipment and understand them. So the difference between a robust manufacturing printer that may be fixed position and in sit in situ, is one process you need to look at. You may have an online on a production line printer that's then automatically printing to boxes, or even a wearable that's print on demand. They'll all have a slightly different requirement, a slightly different understanding, and more importantly, it'll be different people that will be managed, to Jan's point, and maintaining and supporting them. So not only have you got different people from an IT perspective purchasing, as well as ongoing support, there'll be different people managing that on a day-to-day basis. So bringing that all together and having that one-stop shop of somebody that can manage that effectively is really important.
So let's talk about that managed service then, Jamie. And because I understand what you're saying about how obviously efficiency, savings, and all sorts of things, and Jan has already made that very clear as well. But presumably you might, you could encounter some pushback from those people in organisations that are responsible for such things at the moment and things like that. So in the end, why should an organisation subscribe to a managed service?
I think, again, going back to that mission critical element of the process, to make sure that whatever manufacturing facility we're talking about in this instance has as much uptime as it possibly can. So there are no single points of failure. So being able to have an offering that manages that print process from end to end and understands clearly all the elements in there. It isn't just a printer arrives on site, you plug in and away you go. This is managing that process all the way through, and that's really critical.
And if I can add to that, if I look today at your normal office printer, years ago you would buy a laser printer, you pay everything yourself. Today you're actually paying per page. Why is that? The company goes in, comes in and services the unit for you, sends you the toner when you require it. And I think this is also, what we see in the industry a lot of times, the operator will let buying know that he's used the last roll of labels. Then the whole, effect is the whole operation goes down just because somebody's forgotten to do that. Those are simple steps where we then backfill the requirements or the usage that they've had, making sure that the printer gets operated properly.
And presumably the technology is such now that, it does enable you to do all that, because obviously the printers can talk to you, they can talk to each other, so
Correct.
before the operator probably that the labels are running out or whatever.
Yep. We can do technical reads, on the physical heads. We can tell them that the head is going to fail, which means it won't print the barcode properly. We can pre-warn them. As Jamie has already said, we can send a technician out to get this replaced before the thing goes down. There's a lot of managed information we can give to the users as well.
Yeah, and I think there's an awful lot, of software. There is software providers out there that are managing people's label designs, updating them directly to the labels, so there's no need to go in and reprogram them. There are, further down the line in terms of where the labels are used and the barcodes are used. We talk a lot around machine vision products on other podcasts, where we're talking about, being able to read those labels in, at frightening speeds, the way they go down the production lines at the moment. So making sure that label is as we said at the beginning, is right first time, every time, becomes really critical. So once you've invested in all of that software and hardware, then making sure that is maintained and supported is business critical.
Jamie, I'd like to dig into this managed service a bit more. Tell me about the Renovotec approach.
it's really important to understand the Renovotec approach is about flexibility. The first thing is for us to understand your operation. And you may say, well, why do you need to understand an operation when we're just talking about print? Well, that print becomes business critical, as we've already discussed. So once we understand the requirement, then we can start making suggestions on the best way to support that. And we can tear that up from a basic approach where we may just simply support the hardware and the repair of that process. There may be a hot swap out for that perspective, right the way through to the end solutions that Jan mentioned before, where we can have engineers on standby and looking to replace print heads at a moment's notice. So what we like to do, understand the operation and the needs of the customer, and look at them building on what the requirements are to make sure that device has a maximum uptime as possible.
And if I can just add to that as well, I think today's approach in the industry it's like a McDonald's menu. You have 2 or 3 things to choose from, which limits the cost saving and which limits the support as well. We like to understand our customers, how they work, what steps they're taking to be able to build a concept for them, which is service, that they don't pay for things that they don't require neither.
And is that really the essence of the Guardian service? It's this flexibility, this ultimate, customizing it to the customer's requirements.
Yeah, well, we have to have a base level, like everybody with this type of solution. We have to start from somewhere. Starting from somewhere is understanding the customer's requirements, and then we can build from there. Once we know what the customer's requirements are in terms of uptime, whether they're, what are their working shifts? So it's a very simple operation. What are the requirements from a label perspective? We're talking about media. What is the label being used for? Is that label going to have to be removed? Does that need to be, a slightly different adhesive? That's the type of detail and level that you have to get to, that we can then take a step back and understand that the needs and requirements of that customer. That's the real important part of this. So, the flexibility that we always refer back to is key to what we, with the end solution we offer the customer. But by making sure that we tailor it to their needs, but more importantly, what happens with a lot of businesses, if you make it very bespoke for the customer, it's difficult to support them. That's why we have this sort of tiered approach that we put in. We have a number of additional processes that we can add into that.
And Jan, presumably the customer requirements could change as well. I mean, they'll evolve, yeah. And can the system adapt easily?
I think that's the nice thing about Guardian as well, is that we can add or even if it changes where there's less supports need to be done, we can adjust it for the customer. We're all talking about time frames, etc. But I think also where Guardian comes in, that there's a contact with us as well. We could proactively go and advise the customer, look, we see you have 20 printers, we only see 10 running every day. Should we not be looking at a different way of operating?
Little changes, like just adding some devices and that sort of thing, just a new printer and stuff. All that can all be accommodated.
All can be done, yes.
Yeah, that comes back to the that tiered approach and understanding. So whether it is a wearable printer or it's a fixed industrial printer that we're using, we will have a build for that type of device, and then making sure that whenever a new device is required, whether that's on a rental scheme, whether that's on a purchase, that these devices turn up ready to use out of the box. And that's the important part. When we have visibility, being able to access them, again from a support perspective in terms of how we can manage and maintain them, also becomes critical. I think what we see in the marketplace is that once customers understand, there is a real light bulb moment that happens when they buy into this concept and they understand how flexible it can be and the improvements, time saving, and what and the people that were managing that on a day-to-day basis are now freed up to look at all of the other challenges that they have within that operation. Then that's where we start looking at, what about this? Can we move into this area? And that's where we broaden that that land and expand approach.
So I'm just thinking now, if you were talking to a customer who's considering this, and if there was one piece of advice you could give them about the advantages of a managed service, what might that be?
I think the managed service is all about understanding the customer. It becomes as simple as saying 10 years ago when they bought the printer, they were using EN13 barcode, which is quite big. Today we're using 2D barcodes. So what we have, a lot of white space on the label. If we can halve the size of a label, they're already saving half their costs. But it's really getting involved with the customer. It's not they go on the SAP system, and my predecessors ordered this for 20 years. I keep on ordering this because this is what we see that's happening, to really become the trusted advisor for the customer.
And I think it's a very, very simple answer to something we see on a regular basis. The label real estate, is a valuable piece, a valuable, not the cost saving, but also there could be other areas within the operation that need that space that could help their process work a little bit faster. So, that knock-on effect into other areas of the business is really critical, and we see it all the time. And when we go in, we ask the simple question, why are you using that label? Because we always have. Rather than looking at it from an innovative way where we can start making suggestions, start looking further down the business line. Maybe there's a picking process further down the line that could help or could be helped by adding, a 2D digit on there as a check digit, for example. All of those processes are really important. And, exactly, again, talking about the innovation moving from, traditional 1D to 2D barcodes is only a small element of that.
Yeah, it seems to me, Jan, that it's about the fact that you can take an overview of a whole system rather than just individual bits of the system and make good suggestions.
I think it is. I think printing is forgotten by a lot of companies as just being a label that we have to put on somewhere, and they don't realize it stops and starts with a label with a barcode on. And I think if we can get into those discussions, it's really something we can help the customer with, as Jamie says, down the line as well, adding something to make another process better. But we have to understand what the customer does.
Great, that's fantastic. And it's very interesting to hear how important this stuff that we all take for granted is. So if our listeners and viewers want to find out more, Jan, what should they do?
They can contact their account manager. They can come to our website, renovotec.com, and they can have a look where we can be contacted.
And that, I'm afraid, is all we have time for today. I'd like to take a moment to thank our guests, Jan Marien and Jamie Mottershead, for joining us for this fascinating episode on print solutions. If you want to learn more about technology and print solutions for manufacturing, please visit us at renovotec.com. Whilst there, you can also book a visit to our brand new state-of-the-art Renovotec Innovation Centre, located here at our UK HQ in Newton-le-Willows, Merseyside. My name's Dave Harries, and you've been listening to the Talking Print podcast. See you for the next episode.